Captain Kim Jisoo pressed her face against the observation deck window of the exploration ship, New Seoul. The massive alien vessel ahead looked like a dying whale floating in space. Its hull was torn open in 3 places, and she could see tiny sparkles of escaping atmosphere creating ice crystals in the void. "Captain, this is bad," Lieutenant Park Min-hyuk called from his communications station. His fingers danced across the holographic displays as numbers scrolled past. "I count 947 life signs on that ship. Their power core is failing, and life support will be gone in maybe 6 hours." The bridge fell silent, except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Jisoo had never seen an alien before. None of them had. This was humanity's first real contact with another intelligent species, and it was happening in the middle of nowhere, near a dangerous asteroid field that could crush both ships if they weren't careful. "Captain," came the voice of Chief Engineer Choi Minky through the intercom, "that asteroid field is moving. The gravitational pull is shifting. We need to make a decision fast." Jisoo didn't even pause to think. "All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for emergency rescue operations. I want every shuttle prepped and ready. Medical teams get ready for alien physiology. We have no idea what we're dealing with, but nobody dies today if I can help it." Dr. Lee So-hyun's voice crackled over the comm from the medical bay. "Captain, we don't have any data on alien biology. We're going in completely blind here." "Then, we'll figure it out as we go," Jisoo replied firmly. "Min-hyuk, try to establish communication with that ship. Let them know help is coming." The next few minutes were chaos. The New Seoul moved closer to the alien vessel, navigating carefully between floating asteroids the size of buildings. Through the viewports, the crew could see the alien ship more clearly now. It was beautiful in a strange way, with flowing curves and what looked like organic patterns etched into its hull. "Captain, I'm getting something," Min-hyuk announced. "It's not in any language our computers recognize, but the universal translator is starting to pick up patterns. They're sending coordinates of their most critical areas." Shuttle pilot Commander Ahn Ji-hoon suited up quickly. "My team is ready." "Captain, we'll take the first group of survivors." "Be careful out there," Jisoo warned. "We don't know if they're hostile or friendly." The first shuttle docked with the alien ship, and Ji-hoon's voice came through filled with wonder. "Captain, you need to see this. These beings, they're incredible. Tall, maybe 7 feet, with this silver-blue skin that seems to shimmer. And, Captain, they're trying to help us help them. They're organizing their people, showing us where the injured are." Over the next 18 hours, the crew of the New Seoul worked without rest. Shuttle after shuttle ferried survivors from the dying alien vessel. The ship's cargo bays were converted into temporary living spaces. Dr. Lee So-hyun discovered that the aliens, who called themselves Velthari, breathed a similar atmosphere and had blood that wasn't too different from human blood. "It's amazing," she reported to Captain Jisoo. "They have some injuries we can treat with our standard medical supplies. It's like the universe wanted us to be able to help each other." Engineer Choi Minky worked alongside Velthari technicians to stabilize their ship's power core, long enough to get everyone off safely. Despite the language barrier, they found ways to communicate through gestures and shared technical knowledge. "They're brilliant engineers," Minky told the captain later. "Their technology is different from ours, but I learned more in 6 hours working with them than I did in my last year at the academy." As the rescue operation continued, something beautiful happened. Human crew members and Velthari survivors began helping each other without being asked. A young Velthari child, scared and crying, was comforted by Chief Petty Officer Nam Sunwoo, who showed the child pictures of Earth on his personal tablet. Velthari adults helped carry human medical supplies and seemed to understand that the humans were risking their own safety to save them. When the last survivor was brought aboard the New Seoul, the Velthari leader approached Captain Jisoo. He was tall and graceful, with large eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. Through the universal translator, his voice was deep and musical. "I am Elder Thelmora of the Velthari Confederation," he said, pressing his palms together in what seemed like a gesture of deep respect. "You have saved nearly 1,000 lives today. You risked your ship, your crew, your own lives for strangers you had never met." Jisoo felt embarrassed by the praise. It was the right thing to do. Anyone would have done the same. The elder's eyes seemed to sparkle with something like amusement. "No, Captain Kim Jisoo. Not anyone would have done this. We have traveled the galaxy for many centuries. We have met many species. Few would risk so much for strangers." Other Velthari survivors gathered around, all pressing their palms together in that same gesture of respect. The elder continued, "We are forever in your debt, humans. The Velthari do not forget kindness. We will remember this day, and we will remember your species for as long as stars burn in the sky." Within hours, Velthari rescue ships arrived to take their people home. As they prepared to leave, Elder Thelmora gave Captain Jisoo a small crystal device. "This is a Velthari communication beacon," he explained. "If you ever need help, if your people ever face danger, activate this. We will come. We will." Engineer Choi Minky wiped sweat from his brow as he watched the elegant Velthari ships disappear into hyperspace, their engines creating beautiful trails of blue light. "Think we'll see them again, Captain?" Captain Jisoo held the crystal beacon, feeling its warm pulse against her palm. Something deep in her gut told her this wasn't the end of their story with the Velthari. "Something tells me we will, Minky. Something tells me we will." 3 years had passed since the rescue, and humanity was finally ready to join the big leagues. The Galactic Trade Assembly Hall was massive, stretching out like a football stadium, but filled with the strangest collection of beings imaginable. Floating jellyfish-like creatures drifted near the ceiling. Insect-like beings with multiple arms clicked and buzzed in their seats, and towering rock-like entities stood motionless like ancient statues. Ambassador Yoon Hyejin walked down the center aisle, her heels clicking on the crystal floor. She had spent months preparing for this moment, learning about dozens of alien cultures and their customs. Behind her, diplomatic officer Kang Jiho carried a briefcase containing Earth's formal application to join the galactic community. "Stay. Come," Jiho whispered to her. "Remember, we belong here just as much as anyone else." Hyejin nodded, but her heart was racing. Humanity's future depended on what happened in the next few hours. If they were accepted into the Trade Assembly, Earth would have access to technologies that could solve hunger, disease, and energy problems. If they were rejected, humanity might remain isolated for decades. The Assembly President, a tall being, with 4 arms and skin like polished copper, called the session to order. "We gather today to consider the application of the species known as humans for membership in our Trade Assembly." Hyejin stepped forward to the speaking platform. Around her, hundreds of alien eyes focused on her small human form. She began her presentation, explaining Earth's resources, humanity's desire for peaceful trade, and their commitment to following galactic laws. Then came the testimonials. The first speaker was someone Hyejin had hoped to see, but wasn't sure would appear. Councillor Thelandra of the Velthari stepped gracefully to the platform. She had been one of the survivors rescued 3 years ago, and now she held an important position in her government. "Honored members," Thelandra began, her musical voice carrying clearly through the hall. 3 years ago, my people faced certain death in the void of space. Our ship was dying, our life support failing, and we were trapped in a dangerous asteroid field. Then these humans found us. She paused, letting her words sink in. They had never seen our species before. They had no treaties with us, no agreements that required them to help. They gained nothing by risking their lives for ours. Yet Captain Kim Jisoo and her crew spent 18 hours in dangerous conditions to save every single one of my people. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Some species nodded approvingly, while others seemed unmoved. This is the character of humanity, Thelandra continued. They help because it is right, not because it profits them. The Velthari Confederation strongly supports their membership. But as Thelandra returned to her seat, a shadow fell across the assembly floor. War Marshal Gorth of the Krex Empire rose to his full height of nearly 10 feet. His massive frame was covered in dark armor that seemed to absorb light, and his red eyes glowed like burning coals. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone. "The Velthari tell a pretty story," Gorth rumbled, his words echoing through the hall. "But I see something different. I see a species too soft to survive in this galaxy. These humans risk everything for strangers. They show weakness disguised as virtue." Several smaller species in the assembly shifted nervously. The Krex Empire, controlled major trade routes and had a powerful military. When they spoke, others listened. Look at their rescue operation, Gorth continued. They used up their resources, risked their ship, endangered their crew, all for beings they had never met. This is not wisdom, this is foolishness. Ambassador Hyejin felt anger rising in her chest, but she kept her expression calm. Jiho placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. Gorth's eyes fixed on Hyejin like a predator studying prey. These humans will be easy to control. When they face their first real crisis, they will beg for protection. They will trade away their independence for safety. The War Marshal sat down with a thud that shook the floor. Other Krex representatives nodded in agreement, their armor clinking softly. The vote was close, but humanity was accepted into the Trade Assembly by a narrow margin. As the session ended, Ambassador Hyejin felt both relief and worry. They had won, but she could see the calculating look in Gorth's burning eyes. Later that day, in the private chambers of the Krex delegation, War Marshal Gorth met with his subordinates. The room was dark and filled with the smell of metal and oil. Holographic displays showed star maps and trade route data. Begin Phase 1 immediately, Gorth ordered his intelligence chief. I want shipping delays on all routes to human space. Make their merchants wait weeks for cargo clearances. Increase inspection requirements on their vessels. His military advisor, a scarred veteran with cybernetic implants, leaned forward. What about direct confrontation, War Marshal? Gorth's laugh was like grinding gears. No need. We will make them dependent on our trade routes, our stations, our goodwill. When they are desperate enough, they will come to us begging for help. Then we will offer them protection in exchange for their resources and territories. And if they refuse, asked another officer. They won't, Gorth replied confidently. Soft-hearted species always break eventually. It is simply a matter of applying the right pressure. Back on Earth, Admiral Kim Jisoo sat in her office at Fleet Command, now wearing the stars of her new rank. The walls were covered with pictures from her years of service, including one from the Veltari rescue that had started everything. Commander Bae Seung-min knocked and entered, carrying a stack of intelligence reports. His expression was grim as he placed them on her desk. Admiral, we're seeing problems across all our trade routes. Shipping delays, increased inspections, bureaucratic delays that seem designed to cost us money and time. Jisoo flipped through the reports, her experienced, eye-catching patterns immediately. This isn't random, is it? No, ma'am, it's coordinated. Someone with significant influence is making life difficult for human merchants and traders. Our economic analysts think we're looking at deliberate economic warfare. Seung-min pulled up a holographic display showing trade route maps. Red markers indicated problem areas, and they formed a clear pattern around human space. The strange thing is, it's not affecting everyone equally. The Krex Empire's allies seem to have no problems at all. Their ships get priority processing. Their cargo moves freely. Admiral Jisoo leaned back in her chair, remembering War Marshal Gorth's words at the Trade Assembly. She had seen that look before, in the eyes of bullies who thought they had found easy prey. They think we're weak, she said quietly. They think because we helped the Velthari we won't fight back when pushed. What are your orders, Admiral? Seung-min asked. Jisoo's eyes hardened as she looked at the star maps showing the scope of the harassment campaign against humanity. Her voice carried the same determination that had driven her to risk everything for alien strangers 3 years ago. Begin quiet preparations, increase security on our shipping lanes. And, Commander? She looked directly at Seung-min. Start reaching out to our friends in the Velthari Confederation. Something tells me we're going to need allies soon. Yes, ma'am. Should I be worried about how far this might go? Admiral Jisoo stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. They clearly don't know humans very well, Seung-min. They're about to get an education. Captain Oh Tae-hyun was drinking his morning coffee when the distress signal came through. The bridge of the patrol ship Busan had been quiet for weeks, with nothing but routine scans of the outer shipping lanes. His crew was getting restless from the boredom of patrol duty. Captain, we're picking up an emergency transmission, called Communications Officer Lee Wonbin from his station. It's a Krex merchant convoy about 6 hours away. They're reporting engine failure and requesting immediate assistance. Tae-hyun set down his coffee and walked to the main display. The convoy showed up as 5 large cargo ships surrounded by smaller escort vessels. Their transponder signals identified them as carrying medical supplies and construction materials to the Outer Rim colonies. "Any other ships in the area?" Tae-hyun asked. "Negative, sir. We're the closest responders by at least 2 days." Lieutenant Commander Yoo Ji-won, his first officer, looked up from her tactical station. "Captain, something feels off about this. Krek's ships are usually more reliable than this. Engine failures on multiple vessels at once." Tae-hyun nodded. He'd had the same thought, but distress calls were sacred in space. You didn't ignore them, no matter who was calling for help. "Plot a course to intercept. Maximum speed." The Busan jumped to hyperspace, its engines humming with power. 6 hours later, they dropped back into normal space near the disabled convoy. What they found looked exactly like what they'd expected. 5 large freighters drifting in formation, their engines dark and cold. "This is Captain Oh Tae-hyun of the Earth Patrol ship Busan," he broadcast on open channels. "We received your distress call and are here to assist." The response came immediately from the lead freighter. "Captain, thank you for responding so quickly. We have multiple engine failures and are carrying critical medical supplies that need to reach the outer colonies within the next day." "Understood. We'll bring our engineering team aboard to assess the situation." But as the Busan moved closer to dock with the lead freighter, something was happening that Tae-hyun couldn't see. Hidden among the cargo containers on each Krek's ship were powerful bombs, along with weapons that were definitely not medical supplies or construction materials. On the lead freighter, War Marshal Gorth's personal aide, Commander Vextar, watched the human ship approach on his tactical display. His clawed fingers hovered over a detonation switch. "The humans are in position," he reported through a secure channel. "All ships confirm ready for Phase 2. "Execute," came Gorth's cold response from the Krek's command ship safely hidden behind a nearby moon. What happened next took less than 30 seconds. As the Busan extended its docking tube toward the first freighter, all 5 Krek ships exploded simultaneously. The blasts were massive, designed to look like weapons storage had been hit, but they were also precisely calculated to destroy the human patrol ship without leaving too much evidence. Captain Oh Tae-hyun had just enough time to see the first explosion bloom across his view screen before the shockwave hit. "All hands, brace for..." The Busan was torn apart by the combined blast waves. Her hull cracked like an eggshell, and her reactor went critical. In the space of a few heartbeats, 43 human crew members were vaporized, never knowing they had walked into a trap that had been months in the planning. From his hidden position, War Marshal Gorth watched the destruction through long-range sensors. "Perfect. Begin Phase 3 immediately." Within hours, Krek's propaganda broadcasts were flooding the galactic communication networks. They showed footage of the destroyed convoy, with computer-generated images of human ships fleeing the scene. They had witness testimonies from survivors who swore they saw the Busan fire on the peaceful merchant vessels. The evidence was convincing because it had been carefully prepared. Weapon signatures that matched human technology were scattered through the wreckage. The Kreks had even planted fake human military equipment among the debris. This unprovoked attack on peaceful merchants shows the true nature of humanity, Gorth declared in his statement to the Galactic Assembly. "They pretend to be peaceful, but they are actually pirates and murderers. The galaxy must be protected from this threat." The response was swift and devastating. Within 3 days, the Galactic Assembly had voted for immediate economic sanctions against humanity. Within a week, they had authorized protective intervention to prevent further human aggression. General Park Jin-hwan was in his command bunker, deep under the Martian surface, when the emergency alerts started flooding in. The reinforced walls around him shook as automated defense systems came online across the solar system. Colonel Nam Aryum burst into the command center, her face pale with shock. "General, long-range sensors are picking up massive fleet movements. The Kreks are mobilizing everything they have." The main tactical display lit up with red dots representing enemy ships. Jin-hwan had never seen so many vessels moving in coordinated formation. Each dot represented a warship capable of destroying a city. "How many ships are we looking at?" he asked, though he dreaded the answer. 40 battle fleets, sir. That's over 2,000 warships plus support vessels. They're moving in 3 waves, targeting our outer colonies first. Jinhuan felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. Humanity had maybe 200 warships total, most of them patrol vessels like the destroyed Busan. This wasn't going to be a war, it was going to be a massacre. Sir, Ariam continued, they're broadcasting on all channels that this is a peacekeeping operation to protect the galaxy from human aggression. They're claiming legal authority under the Assembly's protection mandate. The general stared at the tactical display, watching the red dots move steadily toward human space. His aide, Major Kim Dongwoo, handed him a communication tablet. Orders. Sir? Jinhuan took a deep breath. Humanity had prepared for the possibility of war, but not against odds like this. Signal all colonies. Activate siege protocols immediately. Every settlement goes to maximum defensive posture. Signal Earth Command. Activate the Minuteman Defense Network. The Minuteman Network was humanity's last resort defense system. Hidden weapons platforms, automated defense drones, and emergency supply caches scattered throughout human space. It had cost them 20 years and massive resources to build, and they had hoped never to use it. Sir, Major Dongwoo said quietly, should we contact our allies? Jinhuan looked at the display again. The Krex fleets would reach the outer colonies in less than 72 hours. Humanity needed every friend they could get. Send a priority message to the Velthari Confederation, he ordered. Tell them what's happening here. Tell them the Krex have framed us for an attack we didn't commit. He paused, remembering the crystal beacon that Captain Kim Jisoo had received years ago. Elder Thelmora had promised that the Velthari would remember kindness. And Dongwoo, add this to the message. Tell them it's time to see if they really meant what they said about remembering kindness. As the message went out through space toward Velthari territory, General Jinhuan looked around at his staff, young officers and veterans alike, all preparing for a war that seemed impossible to win. Ladies and gentlemen, he said quietly, the Krex think they're hunting helpless prey. They think humans are too soft to fight back effectively. Colonel Ariam looked up from her tactical station. Sir? Jinhuan managed a grim smile. They're about to learn that there's a big difference between being kind and being weak. All stations, prepare for combat operations. It's time to show the galaxy what humans do when cornered. The countdown to war had begun, and in the depths of space, 40 Krex battle fleets continued their advance toward human territory, confident in their overwhelming superiority and certain of easy victory. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The first Krex landing ships descended on New Jeju like massive metal birds of prey. The agricultural world was supposed to be an easy target. Just farmers and food processing plants, no military installations, no weapons factories. War Marshal Gorth had assigned only a single division to occupy the entire planet. Han Yujin was harvesting rice when he saw the ships coming down through the morning sky. He was a simple farmer who had never held a weapon more dangerous than a hunting rifle. But as he watched the alien ships land in his fields, crushing his crops under their massive hulls, something changed inside him. They made a mistake coming. Here, he whispered to his neighbor, Park Kyung-ho, who was hiding behind a grain silo. This is our home. Within hours, the Krex had set up occupation headquarters in the main city. Their commander, General Thakmore, announced that New Jeju was now under Krex protection, and that all humans would follow Krex laws. He expected the farmers to continue producing food that would now feed Krex forces. But the farmers had other ideas. The first attack came 3 days later. A Krex patrol was moving through the rice fields when the ground under their feet suddenly gave way. The farmers had spent 2 days digging hidden pits filled with sharpened farming tools. Half the patrol disappeared into the traps, and the other half found themselves surrounded by farmers with hunting rifles and improvised explosives. By the end of the first week, Han Yujin had organized the entire planet into resistance cells. Former agricultural engineer Kim Mi-young showed them how to turn fertilizer into explosives. Veterinarian Dr. Choi Hyun-woo knew exactly which local plants were poisonous to the Krex biology. "We're not soldiers," Han told a gathering of resistance leaders in an abandoned barn, "but we know every inch of this planet. We know which roads flood in the rain, which bridges can't handle heavy vehicles, where the water supplies come from. 3. Creks found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't see. Their supply convoys would disappear overnight, drivers found unconscious, and vehicles stripped of everything useful. Food shipments arrived spoiled or contaminated. Communication towers were sabotaged so regularly that repair teams stopped going out alone. General Thakmore called for reinforcements after losing half his forces in the first month. "These are not farmers," he reported to War Marshal Gorth. "They fight like they've been planning this their whole lives." But the real shock came when the second wave of Creks reinforcements arrived. As their transport ships entered New Jeju's atmosphere, they were met by modified agricultural aircraft armed with improvised missiles. Farm equipment that should have been harvesting crops was instead shooting down military transports. In space, above New Jeju, the situation was even worse for the Creks. Admiral Kim Jisu's fleet operated like ghosts in the darkness between stars. Her ships would appear from behind asteroids or moons, launch devastating attacks on Creks supply lines, and vanish before the enemy could respond. Commander Song Minji had revolutionized human space combat tactics in the month since the war began. Standing in the war room aboard the flagship Seoul, she pointed to the holographic display showing Creks fleet movements. "Look at how they operate," she explained to her staff. "Big formations, heavy ships, predictable patrol routes. They fight, like they're showing off their strength." Captain Lim Seojun nodded from his position at the tactical station. "What's our counter-strategy?" "We do the opposite of everything they expect," Minji replied. "Small groups, fast attacks, hit them where they feel safe. We can't match their firepower, but we can make them afraid to leave their bases." The results spoke for themselves. In the past month, human strike teams had destroyed 6 Creks supply depots, crippled a major command ship, and captured enough alien technology to reverse engineer improvements to human weapons. But nowhere was human resistance more fierce than on Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon. The mining colony there should have fallen in a day. Instead, it became the site of the longest siege in galactic history. Colonel Lee Dong-yuk had been the colony's chief mining supervisor before the war. Now he commanded a defense force made up of miners, engineers, and their families. The Creks had surrounded Europa with 3 full divisions, expecting the humans to surrender when their supplies ran out. They had underestimated human engineering creativity. "Lieutenant Shin Yuna, status report," Dong-yuk called across the command center they had built in the deepest mining tunnels. Yuna looked up from her communication equipment, her face streaked with grease and determination. "The Creks tried another tunnel assault this morning. We collapsed Section 7 on top of them. The defense of Europa had become legendary throughout human space. The miners had turned their industrial equipment into weapons of war. Massive drilling machines became mobile fortresses. Explosive charges meant for breaking up asteroids were used to create underground traps. The ice processing plants were converted to create slippery surfaces that sent Creks assault troops sliding into carefully prepared ambush points." "How are our casualties?" Dong-yuk asked. "Surprisingly light, sir. Turns out that fighting in a place you built gives you a huge advantage. We know where every tunnel leads, every weak point in their assault routes." Communication Officer Park Sun-ho waved from his station. "Colonel, incoming message from Earth Command." "Put it through." Admiral Kim Jisu's voice crackled through the speakers. "Colonel, this is Admiral Jisu. Your defense of Europa has become a symbol of human resistance across the galaxy. How are you holding up?" Dong-yuk smiled grimly. "Admiral, they keep sending more troops, but we keep finding new ways to make them regret it. Yesterday we used the ice mining lasers to cut their landing ships in half while they were still trying to unload. Any supplies you need?" "We're actually doing okay, ma'am. Turns out when you're fighting on a mining colony, you have access to a lot of useful materials. We've been converting ore processing equipment into defensive weapons." Engineer Cho Jae-min looked up from his workstation. "Colonel, the Creks are trying to cut through the main tunnel again. Route 7 or Route 12? Route 7, sir." Dong-yuk grinned. "Perfect. Activate the flood protocol. Let them discover what happens when you try to dig through an ice moon without understanding the water table." Light years away in the command ship of the Creks' First Fleet, War Marshal Gorth stared at casualty reports that made no sense. His forces should have conquered human space in weeks. Instead, they had been fighting for 6 months and were losing ground. "Explain this to me again," he growled at his intelligence officer. "How can a species with no military tradition be defeating our veteran legions?" Sub-Commander Vector shifted nervously. "War Marshal, they don't fight like any species we've encountered before. They use their civilian infrastructure as weapons. Their farmers fight like soldiers. Their miners become fortress commanders. Their merchant crews turn into raiders. And in space? Worse, sir. Their Admiral Jisoo has somehow turned her entire fleet into a guerrilla force. They hit our supply lines, capture our technology, and disappear before we can respond. Our ship. Losses are approaching 30%. Gorth's claws scraped against his command chair. "This is impossible. They are a soft species. They value life over victory. They should have surrendered by now." "Sir," Vector said carefully, "I think we misunderstood them. They do value life. That's why they fight so hard to protect it. Every human settlement we attack becomes a fortress because they're defending their families." Through the command ship's viewports, Gorth could see the lights of human colonies still twinkling on nearby worlds. After 6 months of war, he had expected those lights to be extinguished. Instead, they seemed brighter than ever. "How long can they sustain this resistance?" he asked. His strategic advisor, a scarred veteran of a dozen conquest campaigns, looked up from his analysis. "War Marshal, at current casualty rates, we'll run out of effective fighting forces before they do. They're fighting on their home territory, with unlimited motivation. We're fighting far from home for a cause our troops are starting to question." Gorth slammed his fist on his command console. "They fight like demons. Every human settlement is a fortress. Every human ship is a weapon. We underestimated them completely." As if to prove his point, alarms began blaring throughout the command. "Ship." On the tactical display, 3 human ships had appeared from nowhere and were launching missiles at his escort vessels. "All ships, return fire," he roared. But by the time his gunners had targeted the human ships, they were already gone, vanishing into hyperspace like ghosts. Behind them, they left 2 Krex destroyers crippled and burning. War Marshal Gorth stared at the tactical display and realized that everything he had believed about warfare was wrong. The humans weren't just defending their territory, they were teaching the galaxy a new way to fight, and they were winning. Admiral Kim Jisoo was studying battle reports in her command center aboard the flagship Seoul when the encrypted message arrived. The war had been raging for 8 months, and while humanity was holding its ground, they were still vastly outnumbered. Every day brought news of new Krex reinforcements arriving from their vast empire. Communications Officer Yoon Taewon looked up from his station with excitement. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission on the Old Velthari emergency frequency." Jisoo's heart skipped a beat. The crystal beacon that Elder Thelmora had given her years ago was still in her personal quarters. She had activated it months ago when the war began, but had received no response. "Put it through." The holographic display shimmered, and the elegant form of Councillor Thelandra appeared. But she wasn't alone. Behind her stood representatives from species Jisoo had never seen before, beings with crystalline skin, others that looked like walking trees, and creatures that seemed to be made of living metal. "Admiral Kim Jisoo," Thelandra said, her musical voice carrying clearly across space. "We have not forgotten our debt. The Velthari fleet stands ready to assist you." Jisoo felt a surge of hope, but one fleet wouldn't be enough to turn the tide against the massive Krex empire. Thelandra seemed to read her thoughts. "We also bring news that will interest you. The Krex have made many enemies over the centuries. The Zinthari remember when Krex forces enslaved their mining worlds. The Morvac have not forgotten the destruction of their sacred forests. The Hylian Republic still mourns the colonies the Krex burned." One by one, the alien representatives stepped forward, the crystalline being spoke in a voice like chiming bells. "I am Speaker Veltar of the Zinthari Union. Our crystal ships are at your disposal." The tree-like creature's words rustled like wind through leaves. "I am Grovemind Thessa of the Morvac Collective. Our bioships hunger for Krex destruction." The metallic being's voice sounded like grinding gears. "I am Unit Prime Corvex of the Hylian Republic. Our war machines remember every atrocity. Lieutenant Commander Kwon Seo-jun, Jisu's intelligence officer, rushed to her side with a data tablet. His face was pale with shock. Admiral, long-range sensors are picking up massive fleet movements. It's not just the Velthari. We're seeing ship signatures from dozens of species, all converging on our position. Jisoo looked at the tactical display as it updated with new contacts. What had started as a desperate last stand was turning into something incredible. Green dots representing Allied ships were appearing all across the star map. How many ships? How are we talking about? She asked. Over 3,000 vessels, Admiral. Species we've never even heard of are joining the coalition. The Velthari have been organizing this for months. Thelandra's image smiled. Admiral, the galaxy has been waiting for someone to stand up to the Krex Empire. Your resistance gave others the courage to act. Today we end their reign of terror. The final battle took place in the Krex home system, a fortress of planets protected by orbital defense platforms and the largest fleet in galactic history. War Marshal Gorth had pulled back all his forces, confident that humanity and their ragtag allies would break against his defenses like waves against a cliff. Admiral Jisoo stood on the bridge of the Soul, watching as the combined Allied fleet dropped out of hyperspace around the Krex homeworld. The sight was breathtaking. Ships of every design imaginable, from the flowing organic curves of Velthari vessels to the geometric crystal formations of Zinthari warships. All Allied commanders, this is Admiral Jisoo, she broadcast on the coalition. Frequency. Today we don't fight for conquest or revenge. We fight for the right of every species to live free from oppression. The battle that followed lasted 18 hours and changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Human tactical innovation combined with alien technologies created devastating new battle strategies. Zinthari crystal ships could focus energy beams that cut through Krex armor like paper. Morvac bioships released swarms of living missiles that couldn't be stopped by conventional countermeasures. Helian war machines proved nearly indestructible, advancing through Krex defensive lines like unstoppable metal juggernauts. But it was human coordination that tied everything together. Commander Song Minji, now serving as Fleet Tactical Coordinator, managed the complex dance of dozens of different ship types and fighting styles. Zinthari Squadron, focus fire on the orbital platform's power core, she directed. Morvac bioships, release your spore clouds to blind their targeting systems. Helian units, advance on the planetary defense grid. The Krex forces, designed to fight conventional battles against single species, couldn't adapt to the chaotic multi-species assault. Their formations crumbled as each alien race brought unique capabilities that the Krex had never encountered in combination. War Marshal Gorth watched his empire collapse from his command bunker deep under the surface of the Krex homeworld. His communications were jammed by Velthari electronic warfare ships. His orbital defenses were being systematically destroyed by concentrated alien firepower. His fleet was scattered and burning in space. "Sir," his aide reported, "the coalition forces are demanding our surrender. They're offering safe passage for all Krex civilians." Gorth's claws scraped against his command chair. After 1,000 years of Krex dominance, it was ending not with glory but with complete defeat at the hands of species they had dismissed as weak. Tell them we surrender unconditionally." Hours later, Admiral Jisoo walked through the ruins of the Krex command center. Debris from collapsed walls and broken equipment littered the floor. In the center of the destruction, War Marshal Gorth knelt in the traditional Krex posture of defeat. "We surrender," he said, his voice hollow with shock. "We did not understand what we faced." Jisoo looked down at the alien warlord who had caused so much suffering. "You thought kindness was weakness. You thought helping others made us soft. You were wrong about everything." She turned to her aide, Commander Park Woo-jin, who was coordinating with coalition forces throughout the system. "Organize relief supplies for Krex civilians. Get medical teams to their hospitals. Start rebuilding their schools and infrastructure." Gorth's massive head snapped up in disbelief. "You would help us, after everything we did to your people, Admiral." Jisoo's expression softened slightly. "We told you from the beginning, humans always return favors. We prefer returning the good ones, but we'll return both kinds." The choice of which kind you get is usually yours. As the Coalition fleet began departing the Krek system, leaving behind medical supplies, construction equipment, and teams of volunteers to help rebuild, Councillor Thelandra approached Admiral Ajesu on the observation deck of the Soul. "The debt is repaid, Admiral," she said quietly. "The favor has been returned." Jisoo shook her head, watching as human medical ships docked with damaged Krek stations. "No, old friend. The debt was paid the moment you chose to remember kindness instead of convenience. Everything else was just humans being human," Thelandra smiled. "And what does it mean to be human, Admiral?" Jisoo thought for a moment, watching as former enemies worked together to heal the wounds of war. "It means remembering that today's enemy might be tomorrow's friend. It means helping when help is needed, regardless of who's asking, and it means that when someone shows you kindness, you find a way to pass it on." As news of the Krek's defeat spread throughout the galaxy, species everywhere learned an important lesson. Humans always return favors, and they have very long memories. But more importantly, they remember the good favors just as clearly as the bad ones. The galaxy had learned that true strength doesn't come from the size of your fleet or the power of your weapons. It comes from the bonds you build with others, the kindness you show when no one is watching, and the courage to stand up for what's right even when the odds seem impossible. In the years that followed, the Krek's empire was rebuilt as the Krek's Republic, with human advisors helping them establish democratic institutions. The coalition of species that had formed to defeat them became the Galactic Alliance for Peace, dedicated to preventing any single empire from dominating others again. And at the center of it all were the humans, still exploring the galaxy, still helping those in need, still proving that sometimes the greatest weapon is simply refusing to let cruelty win. The galaxy had learned its lesson well. Humans always return favors, and they have very long memories. The end.